Yeah.
Okay, it's 18 by 24 piece of hardboard that I actually coated with matte medium. So it's got a, even though it looks like just the, because I like the tone of the hardboard. We're out in the backyard and got these great roses here, so we're going to try and do something with them. Going to take one, just going to kind of get the shape. Be a little bit accurate with the drawing, but not too. See, just shape oriented. So I've done a couple of these in the past, and I've got the shape all screwed up in the beginning, so I figured it would take a little bit of time, and we're going to put the one over to the right of it. Maybe open up a little bit more space than it's showing here. And the third one, I kind of like the threes are always better than two anyway, so we don't want it lined up right below. So I'm jockeying these things just around just a little bit. Petal sticking out there. Don't want it quite touching. Okay, and there's a nice big going off the page, which I do like. There, there. This kind of comes this way. We're just kind of diagramming these things in right now. This and this looks like it's hidden. And then there's a lot of leaves, right? So what we're going to do, I'm going to draw in a couple of the key leaves just on this front one right here. So we've got a few little ones up here. Got one about here. One down probably about here. It's kind of a nice shape. And this all gets really dark down here. And if I squint my eyes, which is exactly the way you've got to do this, when you have this much chaos, and I'm referring to this as chaos because it really is, when you have this much chaos, meaning the leaves and all this stuff, the only thing you can do to help yourself is to squint your eyes a little bit to simplify it. So get a little bit of pull up in here, look at some leaves, shapes. Got one really nice one right there. Okay, big one there. It looks like it's about the right space too. So I think we're gonna got enough down to start working. So I'm gonna take big gessoed brush in the beginning. I'm gonna take my dark brown and I'm gonna take the sap green with the brown since we're dealing with a lot, and we're gonna start kind of down in here. Look at that sloppy, kind of nice fun. Nice thing about working on this kind of board is it's slippery and you get some really interesting brushwork, some active brushwork. There. So you can kind of see, it's kind of it's just basically asphaltum and sap green. That's basically what I'm working with here. Let me throw a little ultramarine in it just for variation. Sap green. And I want to look up, it stays pretty dark up in here. Now I can use the color of this board, very possibly. Brown sap has so much terp. The more terp you put in, the more of this kind of transparency quality, and I really want to use that. 18 by 24. So these are actually a little larger than life size. So let's go here, a little bit up in here. Okay. Let's kind of get rid of most of this. I'd rather lose than I would try and hang on to. So what are we gonna do with the next thing? Now the behind, there's a fence and a house, and they're kind of similar in value. So I'm gonna come up with a color that's kind of like that, and I'm gonna use a little bit of white, a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit of the asphaltum, and we're gonna come in with kind of this background. I want it kind of warm, but not too warm. Okay. It's a little bluer than I was thinking, but it actually, I kind of like it. I think it's going to work. It's dark enough. It's almost the value of the shadow of my neighbor's side of my neighbor's house, which is back behind. I don't want this real thick right now because I know I'm going to be doing some painting over. So one of the things you want to be aware of is you plan for the future, so to speak, which means if you know you're going to be coming over it with some other paint, you don't want that paint to be too thick. At least I don't. So I'm going to add a little asphaltum to that color, and we're going to bring it down a little bit back in here. So we're almost merging these two tones together, which is fine. One is more green, one is a little bit more blue, moving into the earth tones. So we're going to I'm going to go a little lighter because I see the fence back behind. It's just a touch lighter. So add a little bit of white. And I'm kind of fussing with the color. There we go. Abstract. Think abstract right now. And let it buzz up, and then maybe go a little behind that flower. We want some darks, because that's what's going to pop the flowers. If I don't get the darks behind it, it's not really going to pop really well. A little bit down in here. A little bit warmer tone, so I threw some more brown into that color. Down there, maybe down in here, I don't know. A little bit up in here. So we're setting the stage. You know, it's not like you haven't heard me refer to that kind of a analogy before. You set the stage, and you know we're working within that time limit.
About 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
I'm about 8 minutes into this thing, and just lay in, just lose some of those edges. A little bit behind this right here. So I've left where the flowers are primarily because it's going to be really hard to get a really brilliant color over wood paint, and those are pretty darn bright. So kind of like what's happening here. Not crazy about all of this over in here, so I might kind of wipe some of this down, and so I can, there we go. A little bit with a rag. Now let's go in and begin to establish. Oh, I think I'm going to go for that, some of that green gold on the leaves first. So I'm grabbing a rosemary number, what is this, a number 10? Yeah, it is a 10. 10 flat. And I'm going to start with ochre because there's a lot of warm ochre, even a little orange maybe, and then some green into it. A little bit of sap. Now the sap is going to darken it, so it just means I have to add a little bit of white to it. I think it's about in here. I might be off, but that looks pretty good. I want a nice stroke. I don't want this to feel labored. So I'm thinking almost like an abstract artist. Oh, I like that. Just by pushing the brush a little bit, I got a really nice characteristic there. So So we're going to come up here, bring it a little bit more this way. One going down, sneak it back behind. A little tidbit of something right in there. We'll go down. I have it right next to the flower. And we got a few behind the flower, so I'm going to put a couple of these in. Right behind this flower, right there. Use the brush. Let the brush do the work. Don't you try and over-force it, because it will show. You try and control the brush too much, and there are times that you're going to want to bring, by the way, control to the brush. So don't get me wrong. It's not like it's forever. There's plenty of time to bring a lot of wonderful control to that brush. A little piece, a little greener. A little piece kind of sneaking out from behind this flower right here. And let's go down below. Let's go down here, there. Some darker green flower, leaves back behind. There. Just looking to see where I can spot some greener leaves. I'm going to put them in, and we're going to let it dissipate, or almost disappear, as we move down to the bottom. And it's just going to become kind of a jumble of paint strokes down there. Let's see if there's anything else. Let's get that a little bit bigger. Little piece of light kind of coming here. Little bit back behind, kind of a green characteristic. Right about there. And there's some bright kind of golden leaves in front of it. With a lot of orange in them this time. A lot more orange than I've had in the past. So let's pop a couple of those in. A couple go in front of the flower. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I do want to get this one in. And the one down below, which is, let's bring it down about here. Okay, a little bit more right there. Little pops up in here. Little pieces of orange. Add a little brightness to the underside of this leaf here. Okay. So we're gonna leave it alone. Gotta keep moving. Any over here, some greens. Let me see. This is kind of vacant, so I do need something in there. And that's looking at the painting. Then I'm going up here and seeing what I can find. So the first thing I do is I look at the painting. This is a little vacant. I need some semblance of feeling of leaf color. Doesn't have to be strong. I don't want it to stand out too much. Okay. And a little bit back. As we come down here, down to about this point, we get a little leaf there, a little bit, right there, down. Okay, so we got a good movement. It's a little dead right in here. Okay, so let's leave it alone for right now, because I don't want to go too far with it on the leaves. I want to really get into the flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that. You know what? I think I'm going to leave that brush alone and use another brush, because it's already contaminated with a lot of green. So in this case, I've got a 12 flat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the shadow. Say 3/4 of those flowers are in shadow. What color is the shadow? Shadow is I have a quinacridine red. And I'm going to add a hint of white and a hint of alizarin to it, and we're going to test it. That looks pretty good, actually. That looks quite good, if I don't compliment myself enough. Because they got to pop, they got to stand out. I mixed, by the way, just a hint of white into that color. So we kind of work for the shapes that we see. And we'll go back over to this flower a little further back, throw a little bit more alizarin into it this time. The alizarin tends to be a little more dead, not as bright. Which is fine because I want it to sit back a little bit. And then up front, let's get this one. Start to get some of the petals in here. A little bit more of the quinacridine and white. I see some real nice light tips I'm going to have to get in there. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get them in without contaminating the color. Added a touch of white to that. Want this petal to stand out just a little bit. Nope, not enough. A little more white. Okay, that's good. So we're getting, it gives me kind of a pink quality. So I'm going from kind of a red to a kind of a pink. And then a little bit more orange thrown into it as the sunlight is hitting it up at the top. Sunlight's warm, it's going to be more, so I have a cad orange hue laid out on my palette for that particular reason. Almost left out that petal there, huh? I'm just going to call it a puddle. So we've got the basis, the foundation, and that's pretty much how you want to start. Now I want to look a little into the shadows. So I'm going to take white, and I'm going to take a little bit of alizarin, so it's a little bit of a different red, a little more white, and we're going to pop in some of these petals that are in shadow, like right in there, some of the lights on them, what you would call the white. A little bit of an orange quality to this light right here. All right. You notice, I hope you guys are noticing one thing, is that I'm trying to make all my strokes that I lay down a little bit different. So they're not always the same. Now, recesses back a little darker. And for the dark, I'm just taking the quinacridone or the alizarin and adding just a touch of blue to it. And what that does is it darkens it and dulls it, because as it goes really back, whoops, see, now that's way too dark, too fast. I don't want to poke holes. So we went just a little bit darker, started to build some of the information back into the shadows. A little bit more here. Let's see, these petals down below. A little bit brighter right there. Whoops. And same with that. And you're kind of bouncing back and from going from one to the other. Now, on this back one, I see a little bit more light happening. So I took a little white to that color. And we had, I don't like the tip I had on that brush, so I got a better tip on it now. There, a little bit there, a little bit there. Come on, white. Just not popping it. I want enough snap. Okay, so we're starting to get, now we're going to start a little bit on the warms of the flowers. First of all, I want to see how the shapes are just working out. This one bothers me a little bit because I don't have the flower wide enough. So I am going to study it, fix that petal, and bring that petal out more. And up here also. That feels better right there. The shadows. Now, for the lights, I'm going to try and stay with the same brush, truthfully. See if I can do it. I'd rather do it with this brush. And what I want to do is I want to take white with the orange and the quinacridone. So what we come up is an illuminated, warmer red. And we're going to test it. First thing I'm going to do is test it, always. It looks about right, but I'm not positive. That's pretty good. It's not bad for a start. Maybe a little bit more quinacridone, a little bit more white. Let's try it one more time. It feels okay. It feels good for this flower at least. Now we got a big light petal right there. And then some that are a little bit more red. And I threw some more quinacridone and white into the color I was playing with there. A little bit of light filtering back here. Now a little bit of that I didn't mix, and I'm getting a little white coming out, and it actually is fine. It doesn't bother me at all. I kind of like that aspect of it. So I'm gonna look back in here. Nice big light on the edge of that goopy paint right there. Basically, it looks okay. You know, I'm not totally disappointed. Let's put it that way. Hopefully, I won't be by the end. Now you got to be aware when you paint outside, your light's going to change. So in this hour and a half or 90 minutes, this light is going to change pretty much, and I'm going to have to deal with it. But the light is mainly going to be hitting from the top. Okay, kind of leaning back a little bit here to see how it's shaping up. It's good. It's probably not as bright as I need it, but let's put the top up here. So I'm really depositing paint pretty generously. This is what I refer to as an intimate garden scene. So it's a plein air outside. The plein air literally becomes a little bit like a still life, and the fact that we're kind of zooming in on something. And since I haven't done one, I thought, what the heck, let's do one. I've done a couple of these that came out really good. A few that were just duds. But it's color-wise, it's looking pretty good. Let's put it that way. You got to get these kind of nice edge characteristics. And then there's going to be some lights in there too. Let's see if there's anything over in here. Maybe right about in here I see some red I can bring into it. Some of this stuff would be fun to do with a knife. And I might at the very end do a little of that. A little bit behind this leaf. Okay, I want to leave it alone for a little bit because I want to start moving into some other areas. So I think before I do, I'm going to get a few more darks. Right there. And then I think I'm going to see if this little liner will work for this. I don't know if it was there earlier or not, but it felt like it needed to be there. Also, I see really interesting, pretty dark as it goes back there under that leaf. I call it a leaf, it's petal. Any of the darks. Now, take a little bit of white, keep it in that cooler range. That's working okay. And this is shaping up, but as it goes behind, back here, it gets a little darker and duller. Oh, bad color, bad color. Hate it when I do that. Let's do it again. Had too much white in the paint. Up in here, I can see a few hints of other petals. Okay, so let's lay off those flowers for a little bit and start to work on some of the other areas. Oh, I do want to just said I want to lay off the flower, but at the same time I want to get that light area right down below here. It's pretty light. It's got a lot of white in it right there. And then the other petals come down lower. Okay. So they're starting to shape up. I'm going to set that brush down for a second. I was using a liner a second ago, and I'm going to again right now. I want to see something. Green, brown, dark. But the stem, nope. I'm painting over a lot of wet paint, and so I've got to keep the paint that I lay on top more wet, which means terp and medium. Try it again. There we go. And we get, I don't know what these are called. Put my little finger down. Usually when I put my finger down, it's just like a fingernail. Yeah, and then there's some leaves in front of that. So I can take one of my other brushes. Let's pick up a filbert, a number 8 filbert here. Kind of clean it. It's kind of, some of these brushes are really a mess. Okay, so we're going to take the green, the brown, and we're going to put, and maybe I need a little white to activate it a little bit more. We're going to put a leaf or two in front. Working pretty good. Now I'm going to take some ochre to that green. Put a few more leaves in here. Don't like that green too much, but they're sitting behind. Let's look behind this guy, okay? So you want to keep moving, keep your eye moving, particularly in plein air, because you can really get hung up in an area that's this confusing. A little white to that green. There we go, maybe a little yellow to it. What I want to do is right down here. I'm looking. Nope, this one. Right down, lost my place. Brighten up that green back there. A little bit more yellow in that. A little bit of chaos there, okay? Let's slow it down a little bit. Let's bring some orange into my ochre. We're going to hit some of the wonderful little accents on these. And the stem, which is pretty dark, but it has a nice green characteristic to it. So I'm going to put some ochre and green together and see what I can do. It's way too green, but I'm going to live with it because it doesn't bother me. Now, if it doesn't bother you, don't be afraid to leave it, even if it's wrong. Wrong is relative too. Okay, wrong doesn't always mean it's wrong for the painting. The way that I'm using it, wrong means it isn't exactly what I see. But there's going to be a lot of times that you're going to enhance what you see. And you're not going to stay with the exactness of any specific characteristic that you might notice. So I added some blue because I'm getting, as I get some of the skylight kind of sneaks through, every now and then we'll get a little bit of a bluish tinge down in there. And I can add yellow to it if I want it to go more green. I like that stroke right there. That's, oh, okay, I see where that was. I see where it was now. And down below, there's a little bit of a weird green that happens right down in here. And little pieces of green. Am I going to get that in there or not? Let's see. Do I want to? Yeah, I need something right here.
So you're just finding abstract shapes.
I'm looking for colors that enhance the overall field, and I have to constantly look at this thing as a total and not as anything as a finish, and not necessarily exactly what I see. And that's the hard part. The hard part of this is painting. It's like when you have a photo, you can paint the exactness, but when you have something like that, and the photo, truthfully, if I photographed this, it would be a lot of the stuff I wouldn't see. So by painting from life, you see more, and that can be really a detriment to a lot of people because they want to paint everything they see exactly like it is. Well, I'm painting the things I see to a degree in order of some sort of importance or hierarchy, as a lot of people like to say, and making a decision as to how I want this thing to feel. Now I'm holding back on hitting my brighter lights up in here, and I want to pick, I'm going to take just some turp and see what I can do with this. I'm going to take this over here. I'm going to bring it, I'm going to overlap here. Bring it down, let it fade. Okay? We see a little bit of darkness, green, brown, the green, and we're going to find from this point down, we're going to find, no, it was too dry, and by being too dry, it just didn't sit, so let's try it again. So now we're bringing those over, making a little bit more of a definitive statement. A few leaves down as it goes behind here, and then it picks up some really nice reddish color, even up in there, kind of as it goes behind there. A little bit, little pops of warms back behind. So I have this one big leaf, but the top part of that leaf is quite warm. So I'm going back with my ochre and orange. I think it was perhaps some raw sienna, a little darker, maybe a little bit, maybe burnt sienna, huh? Let's try. No, let's try the asphaltum. And maybe a little red thrown into it to warm it up. Still isn't working. There, that feels like the right color. This one's okay, but it could be illuminated more. So I just take the ochre, the white, the ochre, the white, the yellow. Maybe a little bit of Naples to brighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to take some yellow to that color, pure yellow and white, because I'm beginning to, I don't want to overstate this, and I think I might be, so. A few of these just get a little bit brighter. So orange ochre up here.
Did you run through your palette?
Huh?
Did you run through your palette?
I haven't gone through my palette. I should go through my palette. My palette is titanium white. It is Naples yellow, which I always have, yellow ochre, which I always have, cad orange hue, because I knew I was going to need it for the reds and for a lot of the warms that are occurring. So cad orange hue, right? Let's see, quinacridine red, alizarin, ultramarine blue, sap green, raw umber, burnt sienna, and asphaltum. And that's pretty much the order of kind of the colors that I have down here. So I think I used this brush earlier, and I'm going to put some turp in it. It's a number 10 rosemary flat, and we're just going to kind of wipe some, get some activity moving around in here. Some of those leaves I want darker against that, what I did for that fence. So I'm going to kind of go in here, just white and brown, and throw a little ultramarine into it. Very active. And now I can use this as a mid-tone and go in and put some darker leaves in. Because I didn't, it was so thin and brushy. Like right in here, there's a group of darker leaves. Back in here, I don't want to destroy a lot of that activity. So, what else do I see that I want to portray? We want to get a little bit, there's some light leaves behind that. So we're going to, once again, ochre, green, and we're going to intensify it. And that will help that leaf, I think. I mean, excuse me, that will help that flower. Ochre, green, and we're going to look back in here. I popped it, but I'm going to pop it one more time. Maybe throw a little yellow into it to get a little more intense. I'll look over here, see if there's anything I want to pick up. Maybe some of those cooler with a little bit more blue in it. Let's see what that does. We're going to go back to the flowers. I kind of want to leave some of this. I don't want to go too far with a lot of the stuff at the bottom, because I can really go crazy and destroy a lot of the activity that I have initially. Now, if I need to break some of those shapes up, I'll just come back in with my little darks, kind of clarify things. There we go. Underneath, but there's a stem. You don't see it, but I want to portray it a little bit more, so I do want to pull it right here. Even though, and then I see it come down, and it gets darker as it goes down, disappears behind leaves, comes out a little bit later, a little light, so hit that in there. This is going back to a degree. Some of this very abbreviated kind of painting goes back to the old concept of less is more. So here's white and pink. Excuse me, I've made a pink with white and quinacridine. And we're going to just test it. Still not light enough. More white, and I need to throw some medium. The reason I'm putting medium is I'm starting to paint over things. So we're looking. And up here. White. I keep saying white and pink, and I actually don't mean white and pink. I mean, I'm creating pink with white quinacridine. Now I just threw some Naples into it because I want to get even brighter and a little bit more white. Just using the corner of that brush right now. Don't like that. There we go. Fingers do wonders when you need them. Little bit. Whoops, way too much. Let's look at this flower a little bit. Not as much on this flower. However, if I want to add more, I can. Giving myself permission. There.
Would you consider using a smaller brush at this point?
Yeah, but I don't want to.
Okay.
The question was, should I be using a smaller brush at this point? Maybe. If I can make a nicer, more interesting, abstracted characteristic with a larger brush, and that's my reasoning. I can always bring control back to it if I want to at another time, and that's what I would do with a smaller brush. Smaller brush is a drawer's tool. Not that it isn't warranted at times. It's absolutely warranted. But for the overall effect, you know, I can see a little bit of a stem. So I'm coming from here down, a little darker. So I'm studying right now. There's a few points of accuracy that you're going to want to get. And the same is true when you paint trees, by the way. If you paint trees, there's a degree of accuracy you want and a degree of freedom. And if you can strike that balance, it sounds extremely. Oh, well, that's all you have to do. Just strike the balance. Oh no, it's much more difficult than that. It's not as easy as just saying, oh, I just want to strike the balance. It's finding your comfort zone. Now these plants. This leaf bothers me. I probably punched it too strong, so I'm going to wipe part of it out. In a second, I'm going to grab my liner. Did I say liner? I didn't mean liner, excuse me. In a second, I'm going to grab my fan brush. Okay, let's be a little bit more particular up in here. The darks. I want it to feel like flowers. I'm going to give you a little bit of my idea. I want it to feel like nice flowers, but I also want it to feel like nice paint. So I'm trying not just to worry about the accuracy of the flower. I'm also worrying as much about the character of the brushwork, that it looks, and the character of the paint. You know, thick paint, thin paint, all that fun stuff that we always think about. Let's take a smaller brush and see what I can do with it. I'm going to illuminate a little bit more. The white, quinacridine, and the orange. This time more white. It's the only way I can get it brighter. White. Getting a little bit more definition here and there from as the sun is changing. more. They're starting to feel okay. You notice I say okay? I'm not sure how good they feel, but right now it doesn't bother me. Nothing is, which is kind of surprising. Nothing is really bothering me right now. I don't think I still don't think it's where I want it to be. I feel like I'm fussing as soon as I pick up that damn little brush. Gotta be careful. Get that nice bright light out on that tip right here. Now, that's too strong, so what I do is take the background, shove it back, and then take the flower and make it thinner. Make it a much more narrow. Let's take this and do a little bit more work up on the lights. This one really bright over here, but I need to take the red first and reestablish that shadow. So there are certain areas I'm being very free with and not being accurate about, and then there are other areas I'm trying to sit down and be relatively accurate. It's striking that balance. Okay, some wonderful little red stems back in there, ochre and the orange. Let's see, back in here, here. Little pieces of reds back in here. So orange, ochre, little, and here, I'm just going to use the side of this brush. Now I'm going to grab fan brush with a little bit of turp. And see what edges I want to lose. See, I want that to stand out a little more. Flowers are looking okay. I don't think I'm as bright as I should be in a few spots in the flowers the more I look at it. Now, that might be because the sun has been changing. But I'm constantly reestablishing, or I should say reassessing, some of these areas as to how, am I right, am I wrong? And you can only do this by looking at your painting. Looking at your subject, you're just going to see what's there, but looking at your painting, you're going to see how your painting looks. So I think that's maybe an important point to bring up, is that you study your painting and not always just the subject. This is sometimes when you stand back and you realize, my God, I need to do this, or I need to do that. So just to get a freer look on some of these areas, I'm using the fan. I don't want to overdo this. I've said it many times. I don't want to overdo that area. Look up in here. Pick up and clean it. Pick up that white, that pink white. I'm going to get a different kind of look with this brush than I am with my other brushes. So I can use little parts of the brush. Or I can use the whole part of the fan to get check the time here.
It's about 50 minutes.
Huh?
50 minutes.
So I've got a little time, and I'm going to slow it down and try and study and bring some control and accuracy to this in some areas. The shape of that leaf, 'cause I felt that was an important element. Some of the stuff I want to be very free and almost get lost. Other things I want to be very clear as to what I'm painting. So I'm going to come down from this flower. There's a leaf right here, and I painted the light, but I haven't painted the leaf itself. There's the leaf. I really got it too dark, and then it's got a sliver edge on the bottom. And as we get closer to the flower, I want to clarify what it is that these strokes are portraying. As I get further away from the flower, I don't care if the strokes, abstract their way out of reality, as long as it's got a good feeling. Gotta be careful. I'm using a small brush. I've got to be careful. Be aware of that when you switch down. Be aware that it's very easy for you to take a small brush and go crazy with it. And pretty soon the whole thing isn't working, and that's when you take your big brush and you go back and you simplify. I think I might have gone too far with that leaf, but between that leaf, here, a little bit up in here, I'm just leaning back to see how I feel about it. A little bit of light right there. I like that orange, those kind of orange strokes I did. Little feeling of this light leaf. Right about there. So you make a clumsy stroke like that, and you come back and you trim it down, and it becomes just a sliver. And that's that, putting it in there, taking it out, recarving, so to speak. Bring that leaf in front. Reshape this one. I don't like the shape of it. Now, a few more greens. We can come down. They're dark greens, by the way. They're not real light, because we're painting them kind of back behind, and I don't want them to stand out. Right up in here, there's a little more light, so I add a little blue to my green, and we'll hit just a few strokes up in there. I've got to stand back for a second, see how I feel about it. It's coming off okay. Some lights. And the light have a little blue in them. If I see, sometimes you paint busyness, because you don't always paint, or as I like to say, it's activity. Sometimes I'm just dealing with activity. So I want the activity to have a nice characteristic, a nice stroke, a nice, even if you don't recognize exactly what that is. So as I stand back, I'm looking at patterning. I'm kind of looking at the overall feel. This feels okay. I don't like, tell you what I do and don't like. I don't like the shape on some of these petals, and I think they could be pronounced more. So I've added white and medium to the orange and quinacridine. So it's still very, but we're going to pronounce it more. We're going to bring it out brighter like that. And like that. Sometimes it's just an edge of a petal that is getting the light. Up in here, do I see it? Oh, I see some darks I can play with. So I'll just go back with pure dark. Just a pure red. when you paint elements such as this, you learn something that you don't when you paint a tree, or when you paint a person, or when you paint a chair. Partly because they're delicate, and partly because the color variations are much more. Sometimes I want to use the word pronounced, but I don't really mean they're pronounced. I mean, obviously, a red flower is going to be pretty pronounced. So, in that regard, yes. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking to see if I can get a little bit more accuracy in some of these flowers. And I'm using this little chisel brush, little tiny. It's a synthetic chisel. I prefer to use. I don't have this size in a rosemary brush, so I'm just using this synthetic chisel, and it'll have to do. So just a little bit of particularism to these things. So we're hitting, basically being a little bit more particular about the areas we're defining, and that's just a little more care. But I want them to be laid in with freedom, with a lot of guts and a lot of freedom. So in that regard, I don't want to pick with a real tiny little brush. I want the brush to be bold enough. Now, next thing I'm doing, as I speak, I am squinting a lot, and I'm noticing things. As you squint, it will simplify a lot of the detail. And you will notice things that you don't notice when your eyes are wide open. So I'm going to take this background. I want to reestablish this shape right there. Does that look good? Mm-hmm. Who knows, huh? Things that bother me. That's when you squint. You will find things that you may not find, and then you have to figure out what to do with it. So noticing it is one thing, understanding what to do with it is the other part of the equation that you've got to deal with. It still doesn't feel like I'm as light as I need to be. And I don't want to keep adding white. So you don't always paint one direction. I know I mention this a lot, meaning you don't always keep painting the light. Sometimes you overdo your lights, and you need to go back and start painting some of your darks. It's the same concept as dealing with tree holes. You want to paint positives, you want to paint the negatives. And then you want to clarify, if need be. If you don't have to clarify, great. But very often you've got to clarify, meaning you have to make it more obvious, make it a little clearer to the viewer who doesn't have the luxury of looking at your subject. And so what you've got to do in cases such as that is, and sometimes I like edges to smear into other edges, and for that you can actually use your fan. So everything isn't delineated 100%. And by that, sometimes it's just a matter of like, I want to take that, stroke it out. I don't want it to have a hard edge. And this is looking pretty good up in here, but maybe up here I want to lose that a little bit. See that? Lose it, then find it again. If you mess it up, find it. Mess it up, find it. And when I start getting too tight, this is the best thing to do. If you feel yourself getting too tight, grab a fan, grab a brush such as this, and go back and start just pushing things around a little bit. Then you can always go back and clarify. If you take it too far, you can always go back. I just turned that into a leaf. It was kind of a leaf. Now it's a little bit more of a leaf. A little light on a leaf back here. Some lights that are happening down there. I don't want, again, I'm trying to leave it alone as I go down. If I go too far with anything, I'm going to do some fussing around here. I'm going to take this big brush here with the white and the brown and the green and a little turp, and we're just going to start pushing this stuff around again. Don't like that. I'm going to take some green. I'm not even looking at what I'm painting right now. I'm just painting almost like an abstract painter would paint. As we move down from to make, I'm going to quote a teacher of mine, to make something look more red, you put more green in the picture. To make something look brighter, you put more darks. To make something look more refined, you put more unfinished. So instead of, I could go back and refine, or I can come back and just say, I'm just going to wipe some of this stuff and not make it as clear. And then as we come up, maybe the strokes become a little bit more evident and they become a little bit more defined. But the further it gets away, I'm going to look down here, see if I see something. That's right here. There's a couple leaves. So I can bring this stem out by bringing a couple of leaves behind, and then go back and establish that. And that's sometimes all you need to do, is to clarify things. It's like, I like some of these little dashing strokes, even though they're not exactly like that. There's indications of fleeting warms back behind. And so that's all it is. It's just a little bit of an abstraction of these kind of fleeting warms. Just looking at a balance here. I don't know if I like it or not. I think I might have overdone it a little bit. Go back and loosen it up a little bit. Right here. Why does that bother me? Okay. So I'm adjusting. Now I painted pretty quickly for two reasons. One, I wanted to paint a little bit more abstract than I normally do, and secondly, we're painting outside and the light's changing. So with the light changing, I want to be a little bit more forgiving with the accuracy. Sometimes I like to take these little tiny brushes like this and use it in such a way that you just kind of, you treat it kind of a clumsy, like that kind of a stroke. Instead of using that point, like everybody wants to take that point and make it perfect, sometimes it's more fun to kind of push it down, let it, you got to make that noise too. Let that stroke just kind of flare off. Little pieces of light. Now, up here a little heavy-handed, a little too thick. So we take that background color, oops, a little bit more brown than that. All you have to do is be close to it. Too dark. That's better. So you see some control strokes I'm putting in there. When I'm just using the tip and I'm just doing little flares like that, that's control. And then the other types are just kind of free form, let it go. So again, that is what kind of I'm referring to when I say strike the balance. And if I did this all the time, I'd probably be better at it. But I don't do this type of painting all the time. But I sure love to move out of my my normal approach, so to speak, and learn things. And that's probably the best thing you can do as a painter, is to not be afraid to just try something that is a little bit out of your norm and see if you can pull it off. Sometimes you're going to pull it off better than other times. Looks pretty good. I'm just looking to see if I need any more clarity. Little edges. That little piece of light right there. And I can see more light. Oh, you know, it's really nice. Let's use everything under the sun. What do you say? Palette knife, huh? I'll show you why. I'm getting a real light, beautiful red, a warm, with quinacridone green, white, and the ochre. Okay, once I think I've got it, where it's pretty good and I have a little terp in it, I'm going to see if I can do a little bit of line work. Right here. Right there. And that's what you're doing. You're just kind of, whoop, a little bit of a glob. Didn't want that much. And you can do it the other way too. We can take darks and push them back. So you don't always have to just take it that one direction. A little darker, so a little bit more dimension. This is standing out a little more than I want it to. I'm going to balance it with a little bit of another light, maybe down. Nope, not quite. Let's try it again. That feels a little better. It just felt like it's a little isolated. Maybe I can bring some greens. Again, why not use them all? Let's use all these tools. The knife gives you a different kind of characteristic. That's it. And I often use knives when I paint rocks and things of that nature. And occasionally I'll just go for broke and try a whole painting in a knife just to see if I can pull it off. Occasionally it works. Pulled one off in Sicily last year, or a couple of years ago. Was very pleased. It's nice when you try it and it works. And if you try it and it doesn't work, you just walk away and you say, well, hopefully I learned something. See, I don't like those two blues. So I'm going to get rid of that one. I kind of like that one. Don't like it. So, grain of the brown. Knock it back a little bit. Pull up in here. I think I'm going to be pretty close to complete. I have no idea where I am time-wise.
An hour and 10 minutes-ish.
So I'm just about done with an hour and a half. I understand it's more like an hour and 20 minutes. Just trying to lose things more. I've overdefined some of the things I feel, and by kind of knocking them back, I can make the flowers feel more finished without ever messing around with the flowers. So I want to look. Don't like the shape of that. I just noticed that. I don't know why I didn't catch that earlier. I don't quite like the shape. I think it's the lower petal, and I think it's right here. I think it needs to be a little bit more that direction. I didn't want that white, but you know what? Even though it's not there, I like it. And those are those kind of weirdo happy accident things that occur. And when they work, leave them. If they don't work, take it away. And you're not going to know whether it works immediately. You almost have to kind of look at it a little bit later and say, yeah, that's working better than I thought, or that's, you know. So I want to check a couple of things here. That one stem, I want to get a little light on it, even though it doesn't show a little light. Ah, way too thick. So I'm going to put a little bit of light on it. Little there. I don't need it over here. A leaf or two in front. That's okay up there. It kind of bothers me. It's a little bit flat and dead. I think if I had my way, I would probably nope, too dark. Trying to get a nice gray blue. There we go. Kind of like painting back into those edges too. Softens them. Oh, that actually helped. I like that. I think it. I don't know if it was a value or the color that actually helped. I think it was probably the color.
Both.
It's just kind of a blue-gray. Look at the shape of this little flower and see if there's anything I can fix. I can fix that and that. And if I want some of this coming through, losing, kind of like there's a couple of smears that are happening in there that actually look pretty good. So we're just about done. I think as I look at it, it's almost successful. And oh, I see a little red. Weird. It's kind of reddish back. So just having those little worms down in there helped a lot. Want to look at that flower? If I can hit, I'm going to use this little brush and see if it works. Little tiny, a lot of medium. A little bit more red in it. Got a little too orange on me. Let's try it again. I think I went a little crazy with that last stroke. Any more little whites that I can see in the flowers, maybe a little bit. Okay, I think we're about pretty close to done. And I'm just pretty much gonna just get that blue color, bring it down so it kind of infiltrates. I can see all kinds of little things I want to add. But you know, I almost have to let it set and look at it in my studio to see if there's anything that I really want to fuss on it. I think I might have too many ochre greens. That's my one thought. Just looking at the overall piece. But that's pretty easy to fix. If that's the way it feels, then I'll just go back and get rid of some of those. Leaf doesn't feel like it's coming from behind. And then we're going to call it, okay? I mean, I could keep fussing on this and finding little tidbits to play with here and there, but I just want the effect of it's okay, I think. I'm really going to have to get a look at it more from a distance to know if I think it's working as well as my initial thought is. We're going to call it pretty much quits for now. So thanks for hanging in there. Nice to try a little backyard piece. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Hopefully this one worked. I'm not sure until I go inside and look at it a little later. But that's where I'm going to leave it for right now. Little touch of orange coming in. See, I can't leave it alone. Got to quit it. Okay, that's it. Happy painting, everyone.